Welcome! Today I'm going to be going over some modules that you don't learn about in the tutorial that I have found particularly helpful as I've learned about them, so wanted to share. We're going to start looking at a hauler, and a lot of these can be used in other ships, but I'm just demonstrating in the ship that they're assigned to. I'll make notes if you can't use them in certain ships. So first thing is Inertial Stabilizers. Go into Hardware, Modules, turn off that filter. So Inertial Stabilizers go into the low slot here. You find them under Propulsion, Inertial Stabilizers. And what these do, if you take a look at the right, over here, it increases the inertia, which reduces the align time. So you can see as you go up, you get a little bit more, or a little bit less, in this case, align time, which means you will align yourself to your warp destination and enter warp faster. It is always rounded up to the next second, so at 9.04 seconds, you have a 10-second align time. And for all of these, because they are all in the 7 point something, there is no real benefit to using only these. Usually what you end up doing, especially for haulers, because you want to get your align time down, to give gankers less chance to gank you, is you add multiples. And now do keep in mind, as you add, you'll see the diminishing returns. And this will be for everything that decreases your align time, which is a positive thing for your ship. The first module is 100%, second one is 87, and the third one is 57. So that is the first one, is the Inertial Stabilizer. And that one is very specifically only increasing your ship handling and maneuverability, which is important as we get into the next one, which is the Nanofiber internal structures. And I believe these are under hull and armor. Hull upgrades. Yes, Nanofiber internal structures. You can see these also are decrease your align time, your inertia modifier, and they also increase your maximum velocity, which is nice. And you'll see these don't give you quite as much decrease on the align time, but they are another option. However, this does have a drawback. Increases velocity, improves maneuverability at the expense of hull strength. Which, if you look over here where your structure hit points are, you'll see that that actually decreases your structure hit points. So if you're looking specifically to increase both navigation and align time, and you don't care about your structure hit points, you can use the nanofibers, which will give you the extra benefit of the maximum velocity for one module. And I'm going to get into a couple of rigs first before I go into the next one. Keep in mind that rigs will be destroyed if you repackage the ship or try to remove them. So be careful. Always enter simulation before you put rigs on to see how they're going to affect your ship, before you just go straight into it. So we're going to go into astronautic rigs. I believe this is a medium. And there is this one, the low friction nozzle joints. So this, as you can see on the right there, also decreases your align time. However, this one decreases your armor hit points at the expense of armor amount. It is another option. I kind of go down the list of which one has the least drawbacks. So I almost always start with inertial stabilizers. If I'm fitting a ship that doesn't have a bunch of low slots like this, then it can become an issue. If you only have, like, for example, 2 low slots, you can fit like an inertial stabilizer, maybe a nanofiber if you want to increase your agility as well, and then use the rig slot for the last one. The nanofibers and the rig will decrease your general HP that you have. So generally not recommended. I try to stick to inertial stabilizers for hauling ships especially, just to keep whatever little tank they do have. And this next module is a defensive active module that was actually changed, I believe last week or the week before. So note, this can now only be applied to battleships, haulers, and command ships. You used to be able to apply this to any ship. I used it quite often on my ventures. And it is an ECM Burst Jammer. So what these modules do is they emit random electric bursts that can disrupt target locks on ships within range. Now it has battleships, marauders, black ops, command ships, haulers, blockade runners, and deep space transport ships. They actually changed the description for this. And do keep in mind, if you're using a burst jammer, you cannot use a interdiction nullifier. So if you are going through nullsec, you're probably better off using the interdiction nullifier. But basically what this does is, let's say you enter a gate, you hit a line, someone locks you before you have time to warp off. You can click this, it will drain your capacitor very quickly, and it is not 100%. You'll see it only has a range of 10 kilometers. But if it is successful, then it will break their lock on you, which will allow you to warp, hopefully, because whatever warp disruptor, warp scrambler will break because they're not locked onto you anymore. So very good. The reason I was using these on ventures is because you could use a warp core stabilizer in the one low slot you get on a venture. But honestly, usually the gankers that were getting me had like multiple warp scrams, so that wasn't helping. So I'd use the burst jammer specifically to try and break locks on ships that are trying to get me, and it worked a little bit more reliably than the warp core stab for me. There is a note about these, however. Because these affect every ship within the range of them, you should only use these in low sec or below. It requires red safety to activate. Because if you use this in high sec, and you're on a gate especially, you will probably hit the police as well, and then you will have Concord killing you, which is also not ideal. And also, if you are in an alpha, such as this character, you will not be able to set your safety to red unless you are in low sec. So you actually cannot use these as an alpha unless you are in low sec or null sec. That is this one. There are the multi-spectrum jammers, and the regular electronic countermeasures. However, these are different. These are a single target. However, they will unlock every target except the target that is using the ECM. So, for example, if you are by yourself and you warp in and try and use this on someone who's locking you, they will keep locking you. That's not going to change anything. The best use case for this kind of thing is actually a drone, which I don't know if alphas have access to. Hold on, let me check. Go into drones. This would be under electronic warfare, and is the Hornet EC300. It is Omega locked. Okay. If you are an Omega, then you can use these. These will use the multi-spectrum ECM. So what you can do is drop these out, have them quote-unquote attack the target that you are locked to, and they will try and jam them so that the person can only lock those drones, and then you can warp away. But yeah, that's it for the hauler. I was going to show this burst jammer on the venture when we switch over, but alas, CCP has changed it, and I felt like it was important to note that this will probably be outdated eventually. EVE Online is always an active development, so please drop a comment below if something changed. I'll try and update this video based on comments and suggestions and things that have changed. We're going to just, for starters, throw on a micro warp drive. And then we're going to throw on a shield booster, because I wanted to show you something very specific. So we'll just do the small shield booster one and the basic micro warp drive for now. And I want to show you, if you go into engineering equipment now, capacitor batteries. So see how this depletes in 20 seconds? Which is definitely not great. Capacitor batteries are great for this because they will increase the maximum capacity your capacitor has. So now we have 38 seconds, which in this case isn't a whole lot of difference, but that is the difference between being stable with just the shield booster. These are great. I found out about these. I assumed if you got to where your capacitor wasn't stable, that was it. You just couldn't do anything about it. So learning about cap batteries was very nice. It also provides a little bit of defense against energy neutralizers. So depending on what you've got going on, who's actually attacking you, capacitor warfare resistance bonus, you get 20% for this basic one, which can be good if you're especially doing like ratting with mobs that will neutralize you. Can be useful. There is also cap boosters. These are generally more effective, but it has some drawbacks, of course. If we throw that in there, first one is that it requires charges. I'm probably not the best person to tell you exactly which charge is the best for this. I do know the bigger ones get kind of expensive, kind of heavy. So what these do is these work like the shield booster. Well, they will just give you flat capacitor amount each time they cycle. As you can see, that one held 1, the 25. You can hold 12 before you have to reload. And also the other thing is, because this is an active module, I've run into a situation where I've forgotten that I have it. I run out of the capacitor and it's too late. My shield booster's already turned off, and I am out of luck. So, that is another option. There is the capacitor recharger. Generally, these don't seem to do quite as much as the batteries do. So this is just a general like recharge rate. I found that the cap batteries will definitely help your capacitor more. If you have a decent amount of cap and you're just trying to get that little bit extra over, you can use these. But usually stick with cap batteries to start with. Next module is damage control. This is a low slot module. It is under hull and armor. And has its own thing, damage controls. So what this does is it provides a lot of green, as you can see on the right, with our defenses. I put this on any ship that I'm trying to add tank to. It does the most benefit for hull, and then armor, and then shield. And you can see it just increases your resistances across the board. This is a great module. I absolutely love this thing. I highly recommend adding these to anything you're trying to add tank to. It's one of the only modules, and you can only have one, by the way. You can only have one damage control on a ship at a time. Because they're kind of overpowered in that way. If you could add multiple, you would have just insane resistances. And last one. So this one, we're not going to see exactly what it does immediately. But if we go into the low slot, engineering equipment, power diagnostic systems. This one does two things. But actually increases the shield too. Okay. Capacitor recharge rate, power grid bonus, capacitor capacity bonus. It does give you some extra shield hit points. It gives a slight boost to power core output and a minor increase to shield and capacitor recharge rate. So for now it doesn't do a whole lot, but let's add that battery back on. And notice we are 40. Without it we're 38. So it does provide a little bit of extra. Increases your shield a little bit. Increases your power grid. So if you're hitting red on your power grid, you can throw one of these in the low slot and that might help it out. Something I found particularly useful. I use these quite a bit when I'm trying to get like a stable cap. Now rigs. So if we go into engineering rigs for this one, this is a small. There are two that help with capacitor specifically. The first one is the semiconductor memory cell. As you can see, that goes from 38 to 50. So this small capacitor power control circuit, this increases your capacitor recharge, which helps a little bit. The ancillary current router is specifically for power grid. So again, if you have the power diagnostics and you still don't have enough power grid, you can throw this on to help that out. Now these are just kind of general fitting things, which are very, very useful. At least I found them incredibly useful. I didn't know they existed, and I was not fitting ships optimally. And these little bits really helped. Let me unfit that real quick. Go into propulsion, micro warp drives, and I want to show you there is a difference here. So if we go into the info panel, go into variations, you'll see that there is a cold gas, a restrained, and a compact. And during restrained, these ones usually seem to be a little bit better for capacitor, but we can actually check this. So what you can do from this screen, you have to go into the info of the whichever one you want to, go to the variations tab, click on the top one, shift down, and now go into Neocom, Utilities, Compare Tool, and then you drag them in. And now there's a very, very useful option. If you go into this little hamburger menu up here, only show attributes that differ. This is not on by default. You should turn this on. It makes your life so much easier, because without this, it'll just show you every attribute that's available. Whereas now you can see what the difference is. So activation cost, capacitor bonus, maximum velocity bonus. So depending on what your fitting situation is, you can do different things. For example, if you are running short on power grid and CPU, your best bet is a compact. Anything that's compact is going to be easier to fit because it has lower power grid and CPU usage. The enduring ones I generally find to be better for capacitor and the restrained as well. So the cold gas one has a lower activation cost. The restrained one has that reduces your capacitor less when you equip it, which is very, very good. And this is very handy for a bunch of things. Finding which module is best, because usually, from my experience, there might be exceptions to this. The Tech 1 basic module of any module that exists is always going to be worse than any of the other ones. So for example, let's go back into the damage control. That damage control 1, let's say it increases your effective HP to 1295. If you go into, where is the compact one? This one, 1358. So just using the compact one will increase this amount. And the nice thing about these is they don't require extra skills, whereas when you get into tier 2, you need much higher skills. So I generally recommend always, I would go into here, go into variations. I'm not having any fitting issues right now. So to increase my capacitor stability, I would just throw that one on. And now even when this cap battery is off, and let's get rid of these real quick. Okay. Yeah, even without the cap battery, we still have 1 minute and 26 with that shield booster, which is a huge increase. So that's good to know. It's also good to check if, for example, the compact one is going to be better than the Tech 2. Because believe it or not, sometimes that is the case. Sometimes your Tech 2 modules are actually worse than a compact Tech 1 module. And that is always something that you want to keep an eye out for, because the Tech 2 modules are more expensive. So no point in spending more resources on them. And last thing I want to touch on is, let's go into mid slots. These filters here are very important. You can do hull restrictions, and this will remove anything that the ship cannot equip, which in this case is structure equipment, since it's not a structure. You can also filter by resources. So if you have a spare slot left and you don't know what you can use, you can click on this. And now you can see which afterburners. So you can overprop this if you really want to, put a larger propellant on if that is something you want. You can go 1678 versus 867 meters per second. And this reduced the micro warp drives down to the one that is appropriate to this vehicle, which is useful. So you're not sorting through, especially these ones, the 5 and the 500 and the 50s. Just makes it a little bit easier when you're fitting. So yeah, that's all for right now. I just wanted to make this quick video. Stuff I found incredibly helpful, and stuff that I have seen newer players struggling with a little bit. So I hope it's useful. In the comments below, let me know any module you have found particularly useful. Put your sad emojis for the nerf to the burst jammers, because I really don't like the change, but I understand. Having anything be able to put a burst jammer on is a little weird, but yeah, it is what it is. Game changes, developers make decisions. And also, if anything has changed or something's not working for you, you have any questions, also put those down in the comments, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. I hope you're all doing well. Stay radiant, and I'll see you next time.